Okay, so in this video, we're going to look at how to identify the domain and range of a graph. And so you can see here that we have the graph of a function, and we can see that it's called f of x, and we want to identify the domain and the range of this graph. Note that it's limited. It doesn't go on to infinity. It starts here and it ends here. Okay? And so remember that the domain is all of the input values. And I want to remind you that all of the input values are represented on the x-axis horizontally. Okay? And so all we have to do is go to the leftmost part of the graph, which is right here, and then go to the rightmost part of the graph, which is right here. And so the graph begins here at -4 and it ends at +4. Okay? If we were to go less than -4, like right here, you would see that there's no graph. If we were to go to the right of 4, you would see that there's no graph. And therefore, the domain is limited. There are inputs only at -4 and up to 4. And that means that the domain itself is, so here's how we can identify the domain. We can sort of draw vertical lines that contain the whole graph between -4 and 4, and so the domain is going to be from -4 up to 4. Okay? We can do the exact same thing with the range, only vertically. We can see that we go to the highest point, which is right here. We go to the lowest point, which is right here. And we can see that these lines, these lines right here contain the whole graph, with the highest point being here and the lowest point being here. And you can see that the highest point is 2 and the lowest point is 3. Therefore, the range is from, this is not 3, this is -3. -3 up to 2. And so we can see that the range runs from here up to here, and that is from -3 up to 2. So the range is -3 up to 2. So now, let's look at another example. Let's say we've got this graph right here. Let's call it f of x or g of x or whatever. And we want to identify the domain and the range. So to get the domain, we're going to follow the graph as far left as it goes, which is here. This is as far left. Here's the farthest left that the graph goes, right here. And we can see that that's -3. Then we follow the graph. See this? We follow the graph all the way to the right, where it stops, which is right here. It stops right here. And so this is the right side of the graph. And so this is 3. And so the domain of this function is from -3 up to 3. Go. The range, go to the lowest point of the graph. Here's the lowest point of the graph, and so we'll draw a horizontal line there. It's about -5.5, let's say. And the highest point of the graph is right here, and we'll say that that's about maybe 2.7. And so the range of the function is -5.5 up to 2.7. Okay? And again, all we're doing is boxing in. We're just boxing in the whole function so that we can see the lowest point up to the highest point for the range, and then for the domain, it's the leftmost point to the rightmost point. Okay, that's all we're doing for domain and range. All right, we got a couple more examples here. Let's look at this one. This is a linear function, and so I want to call your attention to something here. Look at this right here. The end of this graph is an open circle. Okay, so when we draw an open circle with a graph, that means that we do not include. We're going to use an open parenthesis. Instead of doing a bracket, we're not going to do a bracket. we're going to do a parenthesis. Okay, so anytime we have an open circle like that, it means it does not include that last point in the domain and the range. Okay, and so the domain is going to go from the leftmost point here. Okay, this is the leftmost that the graph is, and over here is the rightmost that the graph is. And so we can see that the leftmost is at -6 and the rightmost is at 4. But look here. On this side, excuse me, the circle is a closed circle. And so we're going to do a bracket on the right side, not a parenthesis because of the open circle. Okay? And so we're going to go from parenthesis, so this is the domain, it's going to be parenthesis -6 up to 4 bracket. Okay? And then the range, the lowest point is right here. This point is the lowest point of the graph. And up here is the highest point. This is the highest point of the graph. And so the highest point of the graph is at 1. The lowest point of the graph is here at -4. But because of the open circle, we are not going to include -4. So we're going to do range parenthesis -4 up to 1. And that is the range. We'll do one more example. This one's a little strange, but I'll explain it to you. This is a constant function. Notice that it has an open circle on the right side, but that it has a closed circle on the left side. Okay? And so we're going to do a bracket on this side, and we're going to do an open parenthesis on this side. Okay? And to do the domain, we can see that it goes, this is the leftmost, and that's -5, and this is the rightmost, and that's 7. So the domain is going to go from -5 up to 7, but parenthesis on the right side because of the open circle. But what about the range? Well, look, it's the whole graph is horizontal right at 2. It's no higher than 2. It's no lower than 2. So the only output value is simply 2. So we can say the range is 2, or if you really want to, you don't have to do this, but you can do bracket to bracket, okay? Or really, you can just write a 2, okay? Another way to do it is you could do range, and you could do the bracers and put 2, and that's fine too, okay? And that's it for domain and range of a graph.